Energy. It's of concern to everyone. At Nevada National, we're supporting research on the innovative uses of solar energy for the future. We took the lead with the federal government and business to utilize Nevada's natural geothermal energy for industry. And it's working. Nevada National, where imagination in banking is making the business of living better for everyone.
KLAS, TV8, Las Vegas.
This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. Illinois Congressman John Anderson today withdrew from the race for the Republican presidential nomination and announced his expected independent bid for the White House. Anderson, whose appeal has been to moderates and liberals of both parties, but who has not won a Campaign 80 primary, said the nation deserves an alternative to the presidential choices being offered. Bob McNamara reports.
John Anderson, October 1979.
I would not contemplate forming a third party or running as an independent apart from the impossibilities that that would represent as far as the calendar is concerned. It is not my intention.
John Anderson, today.
I have chosen, after careful deliberation, to pursue an independent course toward the presidency of the United States.
Nationwide polls say that a lot of voters are unhappy about making a probable choice between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan in November. But a problem Anderson must overcome is that when he is added as a factor in a presidential race, he doesn't fare well either. Anderson, who campaigned virtually alone through the New Hampshire primary and then scored a surprising second-place moral victory in Massachusetts, was later drummed out of his party by his opponents in an Illinois debate.
John, you really would find Teddy Kennedy preferable to me?
You're head and shoulders above Jimmy, and you're head and shoulders above Teddy, and head and shoulders above Jerry Brown. But I'm arguing you're in the wrong party, John.
I didn't know we had a loyalty test in the Republican Party.
Historically, candidates who have run outside the two major parties have failed. George Wallace was the most recent serious contender, running as a third-party candidate in 1968. He was attempting to put the election before the House of Representatives for a decision. And at this point in his campaign was pulling about 14% of the vote from Nixon and Humphrey. And today, Anderson finds himself ahead of where Wallace was. Anderson does best with college graduates, eastern city dwellers, independent voters, and those earning at least $25,000 a year. But money will be one of Anderson's biggest problems. Now cut off from federal campaign matching funds, independence means he must rely on a direct mail fundraising effort that hopes to raise as much as $15 million, a figure still half the amount the major party candidates can spend. Anderson also faces legal obstacles in getting his name on most state ballots. Already, he's missed filing deadlines in 6 states, which account for 14% of the country's electoral votes. Anderson said if an independent race is unrealistic, he will give up. But he vowed he was not creating a third party, nor quitting the Republican Party.
This is not an assault on the two-party system. It is admittedly a challenge to the nominating process. I think it will open up that process by which we make that very important ultimate decision in November as to who our next national leader should be.
But with the odds and legal and financial obstacles stacked against him, John Anderson is faced with becoming a footnote and not the phenomenon of Campaign 80. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Washington.
Anderson said he will return more than $300,000 in unspent federal matching campaign funds and release the 60 Republican convention delegates he has won. Anderson's withdrawal leaves only Ronald Reagan and George Bush as the major contenders for the Republican nomination, and here's how they reacted.
Mr. Anderson running as an independent with the vote that he has been receiving so far in the primaries is going to have a greater impact on the Democratic contender in the race than he will on the Republican.
I believe it will end up, you get a great ride the first few days, it's going to be a very chic thing to analyze, and it's going to go right straight downhill because we are essentially a two-party system, and with few contradictions, those movements, third party or independent, are doomed to failure.
straight talk. What some Lincoln owners think of the shorter, lighter Lincoln Continental.
Even though it's shorter and lighter, it still rides like a incredible luxury vehicle.
It gets excellent economy and it has the size that I need. No car can compare with the interior size of that Lincoln.
Doing great. Highway mileage is fantastic.
Trimmer size for better mileage. Less weight for better mileage. Automatic overdrive for better highway mileage. Lincoln Continental 1980. Better mileage without giving up luxury.
The Remington Micro Screen Shaver is the only electric with this guarantee. Shaves close as a blade or your money back. Here's why. The first micro screen is so thin and flexible, it shaves incredibly close. The second micro screen shaves even closer. Remington's American-made. It costs much less. Norelco's imported. It costs much more. Save with a Remington Micro Screen. Shaves close as a blade or your money back.
Now, a Father's Day special. Free Timex clock with a Remington Micro Screen Shaver.
When President Carter announced new sanctions last week against Iran to force the release of the American hostages, he warned that the only available next step would be military force. Well, that threat has triggered something of a rebellion in the Senate, which maintains that under a 1973 resolution, the president cannot take such action on his own. More on this from Phil Jones.
In a letter to Secretary Vance and signed by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Frank Church and the ranking Republican Jacob Javits, the Secretary was requested to let the committee know when consultations can begin on the subject of possible military action. The letter contained a blunt warning that the War Powers Resolution requires consultations with Congress before military decisions are made. But the War Powers Resolution actually states that the President, in every possible instance, shall consult with Congress before introducing U.S. armed forces into hostilities. Could the President get around consultations by arguing that it was not possible? Senator Church says emphatically no.
He has plenty of time to consult. The every possible instance, I think, refers to a situation in which American forces might be attacked abroad and he has to immediately order them to defend themselves, or where American lives would be endangered in such a way that there is no time for consultation. This is a very different case.
What this letter reflects is a growing concern here in Congress over President Carter's tough military talk. The questions being heard more frequently are, is the president's hardline rhetoric aimed at getting Allied support, or is the Carter administration tumbling into a serious military confrontation? Phil Jones, CBS News on Capitol Hill.
Iran today made a counter threat, saying if the United States mines or blockades Iranian ports, quote, we shall close the Persian Gulf. That presumably would affect oil exports from countries such as Saudi Arabia. The Iranian government also charged today that the United States had reneged on an agreement regarding the ousted Shah. Doug Tennell has a report from Tehran, cleared by Iranian censors.
Iran's president, Abul Hassan Beni Sadr, today called American measures against Iran unjustifiable. He told CBS News that the Carter administration had broken a commitment on the hostage issue to play what Beni Sadr called this game of economic blockade. Beni Sadr said that the Carter administration had agreed with his government on the question of suing the Shah in a Panamanian court and extraditing him to Iran. Beni Sadr denied that the agreement called for the transfer of the hostages into the government's custody, but he said that in return his government had agreed to improve the conditions in which the hostages were being held. When asked if he had any special message for the American people now, Beni Sadr said in part that the question of the hostages will not last long and will be solved sooner or later. Beni Sadr charged that the United States is exploiting current unrest among some Iranian minority groups and on the country's university campuses, an assertion that was echoed later today by his foreign minister.
90% of them are being managed, subsidized, and organized by the CIA, without exception, Iran or elsewhere.
That includes those who demonstrated on the campuses in Tehran in recent days?
Well, some of them, not all of them, definitely not. Some of them, yes.
Gobzadeh also hinted at one possible response to any naval blockade of Iranian ports.
We are not going to let any oil get out of the Persian Gulf.
Will you use your Navy to that end?
There are other things more effective than Navy to be used.
Can you tell us about those things?
No.
Later, Benny Sadr appeared at a memorial service for one of Iran's leading ayatollahs, who the Iranian government claims was murdered by the Iraqi regime. When asked about Iran's growing isolation from the Western world today, Benny Sadr said that he was used to isolation from the days when the Shah ruled Iran. Iran is facing crisis from every direction, Benny Sadr said, but the Iranian people will not surrender. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Tehran.
Regarding Benny Sadr's claim that the Carter administration had broken a commitment on the hostage issue, White House News Secretary Jody Powell responded, quote, "We were not a party to any commitments on that, if any were made, which I doubt." Over at the State Department, there were new warnings to Iran, but these were about Iran's new economic links with the Soviet Union, not the hostage situation directly. The department spokesman said that if Tehran strengthens ties with Moscow, it runs the risk of Soviet domination. The Carter administration's handling of foreign policy in Iran and Afghanistan, as well as other areas, came under sharp attack today from a chief architect of past policy, former Secretary of State Kissinger. He spoke at a Washington conference on foreign policy, and Marvin Kalb was there.
It was a somber vision of America's predicament. Kissinger declaring the U.S. faces one of the gravest foreign policy crises in its history, then indirectly charging the Carter administration with having failed to provide what he called clear and unambiguous leadership. He reached back for historical parallels, and while never mentioning the president by name, he recalled a former British prime minister noted for his umbrella.
In 1938, Chamberlain was the most popular man in England. 18 months later, appeasement had become a byword for abdication of leadership.
Kissinger recalled another period, 1914, when chaos was again followed by a world war.
Wherever one goes today, one reads the analogy to 1914. And there is a danger that a series of minor crises will gradually get out of control.
Specifically on U.S. policy towards Iran, Kissinger expressed sharp disagreement.
The worst danger, in my view, is gradual escalation, in which, at every stage, one advertises one's uncertainty and encourages the other side to go up on the escalation ladder one more step, until one gradually is at a point where things have got substantially out of control.
Kissinger said he was not blaming any one person or any one administration, but he left the unmistakable impression that his critique was aimed directly at the White House. In the audience were sympathetic foreign policy experts, Republicans and Democrats, eager to be tapped for service in a Reagan administration. Marvin Kalb, CBS News, Washington.
Barbara and Kenneth Timm, the mother and stepfather of embassy hostage Kevin Hermaning, are trying on their own to resolve the Iran crisis. The Timms, who went to Tehran to visit their son, have appealed to the Iranian government to meet with members of the U.S. Congress. Their lawyer, who announced this appeal, did not disclose any details and said they were awaiting an Iranian response. Iran has agreed to allow Switzerland to represent U.S. interests in Tehran, and Algeria will represent the Iranian government in Washington. But in an exception to normal diplomatic practice, American officials say the Iranian embassy in Washington will not be turned over to Algeria as long as the U.S. embassy in Tehran remains occupied. Japan today joined America's European allies and said it will impose economic sanctions against Iran. In addition, it is withdrawing some of its diplomats from Tehran. The UN Security Council has censured Israel for its military incursion into southern Lebanon earlier this month. It also criticized Israeli support of Lebanese Christian militia that have attacked the UN peacekeeping force. The United States abstained.
I'm looking for the newest thing in watches. Have you seen the new Bullovers? They even have a watch now with a musical alarm. This is our Lady Bullover room, where thin is in, elegant styling, gold.
How about diamonds?
You want quartz accuracy? Bullover is so accurate, it went to the moon.
Time ahead of its time.
That's Bulova watch time.
If you think all steel-belted radials are alike, watch this, a Goodyear radial. Michelin, Goodrich, all losing air, going flat. Uniroyal's new Royal Seal, no air loss. Inside, Uniroyal's revolutionary puncture sealant surrounds and seals most tread punctures permanently. Uniroyal's new Royal Seal, for the quality tire that's tougher than nails. You want Uniroyal there.
It looks like the historic British evacuation of Dunkirk, a ragtag fleet of boats of all kinds and sizes shuttling from shore to shore. But it's the sea lift of refugees from Cuba to Florida, sailing right along with Castro's blessing and the State Department's disapproval. Ed Rabel reports from Key West.
They had been separated for 15 to 20 years, Miami Cubans and those from the island. Now, finally, they are together. For them, the waiting, hoping, and praying are over. In Key West, boat docks and boat yards are jammed by Cubans buying, renting, and launching almost anything that will float to get to Cuba and bring family members and refugees out. The Coast Guard says 400 to 500 such vessels are sailing between Florida and Cuba. At least one sank, others are breaking down, and the Coast Guard's rescue forces are strained to the limit. U.S. authorities are discouraging the ragtag operation with threats of fines and imprisonment. But most agree there's no stopping it, even if they were ordered to do so.
I doubt realistically that one could stop it now.
Why?
The sheer numbers involved and the expanse of water that you're talking about trying to cover. That we would have to physically heave each one to and return them. And I think you could imagine the size of that task.
The Carter administration says it cannot condone this private, unsanctioned relief operation. But U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service officials are right at the docks working to clear the refugees into Florida rapidly as each boat arrives. The orderly processing here by U.S. officials is, for the Cuban exiles, a confirmation of what they thought all along, that President Carter would not stop what they call their mercy mission, for to do so could be considered a violation of his own human rights policy. Ed Rabel, CBS News, Key West, Florida.
By tonight, about 1,200 refugees had arrived in Florida this week. The House Ethics Committee today recommended that the House censure California Democrat Charles Wilson for financial misconduct, excuse me, and oust him from his subcommittee chairmanship. Censure is the strongest punishment the House can impose, short of expulsion. Interior Secretary Andrus today removed William J. Whalen as director of the National Park Service. Andrus said he acted because he believed it was best for the service, for the department, and for Mr. Whalen's health. Whalen came under the fire of conservationists for scrapping plans to keep hundreds of motor vehicles out of Yosemite National Park. The 39-year-old Whalen was hospitalized last month for an undisclosed illness.
Why do you carry Visa Traveler's checks?
Visa Traveler's checks? They're accepted everywhere I go.
If I lose them, they can be replaced.
They're good worldwide. I don't have time to worry about cash.
Why do I carry Visa Traveler's checks? Why people are always so nice.
It's a good, safe way to carry money.
They work for me.
We use Visa Traveler's checks in Spain, England, all over.
I've traveled to 18 countries this year. Believe me, Visa's there.
For travel and shopping, Visa is the most widely recognized name in the world.
Oh, am I too early? My watch is fast.
The others will be here any minute, Jenny. Relax.
Sorry, I've had too much caffeine, and my doctor says that it bothers me.
Don't you drink Sanka brand decaffeinated coffee?
I like real coffee.
Sanka brand is real coffee. Have some.
It does taste good.
Jenny, am I too early?
Nope. We both have time for a cup of Sanka brand.
Sanka brand. Enjoy your coffee and enjoy yourself.
There's been growing concern on Capitol Hill that the federal regulatory agencies are exceeding their authority. Legislation to limit one of those agencies, the Federal Trade Commission, has bogged down in a conference committee. So today, House and Senate conferees took their stalemate to the President. Leslie Stahl reports.
The major sticking point is whether the FTC will be able to rule on the fairness of children's television and to ban sugary cereal or tobacco ads if the commission finds they are unfair to children who might be unable to determine if the products are not good for their health. After meeting with the President, Senator Ford of Kentucky said an agreement is close at hand.
On balance, I think the Senate and the House conferees, even though there's some strong differences among individuals on both sides, we're very close to having a piece of legislation that he can sign.
But that was before reporters started asking questions.
Would you expect children's television to be something the FTC can still regulate after this bill is passed?
I think that under the language of the authorization bill, yes.
I'd like to respond to that one.
Okay, sure. You can respond to it now if you want to.
All right. What you're going to get under this bill as far as advertising is concerned is every form of unfair advertising you want, and the FTC won't be able to stop it. And the president will accept that bottom line, and you're going to have a generation of kids with rotten teeth and cancerous lungs because of this bill. There are three principal groups that want this standard changed. One is the advertising industry itself, two is sugar, and three is tobacco.
Senator Ford, when you were talking about protecting the people of your state, you were really talking about the tobacco industry, weren't you? Is that the constituency?
You know, that's when Senator Packwood came out and got in front of me. You know, he's running also. So what I'm saying to you is that we have a package that I think we can look at now and structure. The problems are there. You can accuse me of most anything, and I have only my voice to refute. You have all the television and the newspapers. What we're trying to do is to start a spot. As we call down in Kentucky when we have a bad basketball year, we have character building. So I think that you ought to start back to one point.
All right, go ahead.
Can I make one point, Senator? I think the important thing is no one in that meeting agreed to anything.
That wasn't enough to stop Senator Packwood, who went on about the issue until he angered the chairman of the House Commerce Committee.
We have said that henceforth you can put on the air unfair advertising, and the Federal Trade Commission can't stop it, and I think that's a shame for consumers in this country.
Well, I would say this about the senator. If he says that I'm not for every consumer in America, he's not telling the truth. My record of 32 years in this Congress will tell you that I've been for the consumers of America, not just for your state or any other state.
But henceforth they can have unfair advertising.
They can.
That argument went on, with both sides finally agreeing on something, that a compromise is nowhere in sight. As for the president, he favors giving the FTC the power to ban unfair advertising, but he would not say he would veto a bill without those powers. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
The White House announced today a compromise with Mobil Oil on charges the oil company overcharged customers $45 million last year. Mobil, for its part, agreed to do without $30 million in future price increases, and the Council on Wage and Price Stability acknowledged that Mobil acted in good faith and the price increases were due to honest differences of opinion about price guidelines. More oil companies have reported first quarter profits substantially above last year's. Gulf was up 56% with three-month earnings of $389 million. Conoco up 103%. Tenneco up 45%. Marathon up 33%. Getty up 107%. And Ashland oil profits rose 74%. The United Airlines parent company, UAL Incorporated, today reported a first quarter loss of $40 million. High fuel costs were blamed. Sources say Federal Reserve Board Chairman Paul Volcker helped arrange up to $800 million in credit for the billionaire Hunt brothers to help them pay silver speculation debts. The Associated Press reports that Volcker approved credit from private banks because of concern that the Hunts' financial difficulties could jeopardize some banks and brokerage houses. Now, House Banking Committee Chairman Royce is planning hearings on whether the Fed board violated its own restraint directive on credit sought for speculative purposes. Volcker is out of the country, not available for comment, but a spokesman said neither the board nor its chairman initiated any effort to obtain bank loans for the Hunt brothers. The stock market today was up in active trading.
How are we coming, dear?
Just fine. Darn these hands.
Your minor arthritis pain is acting up. What this pain needs is Bayer aspirin, 100% pure pain reliever, 100% pure aspirin. And remember, for arthritis pain, doctors recommend aspirin 4-to-1 over any other non-prescription medication.
Honey, you look terrific.
For hours of relief, Bayer aspirin, 100% pure pain reliever for arthritis pain.
Suppose your TV disappeared. Would your homeowner's insurance give you full protection, or would your loss be based on depreciated value? With Safeco's full value coverage, we replace new for old at today's prices. Now, you might not be able to buy happiness, but your Safeco agent can surely sell you peace of mind with full value homeowners insurance.
Well, did she or didn't she? Rosie Ruiz today denied that she cheated to become the women's winner in Monday's Boston Marathon, but she faced tough questioning from critics who believe she may have given new meaning to the biblical observation, "The race is not to the swift." Randy Daniels reports.
In this race, Rosie Ruiz won the women's division of the Boston Marathon, a grueling 26-mile race in record time. Her time was so stunning that few observers or participants believe she completed the entire course. Ruiz was an unknown with little technical knowledge of long-distance running. The fact that she won and was never seen by race officials or in videotapes of the marathon until the final stretch has sparked the biggest controversy in the history of the prestigious event.
I doubt if she can do 1 mile at the speed she did the Boston Marathon.
With Steve Merrick, president of the running club she joined only a week before the Boston race, Ruiz went before a hostile press in New York to defend her performance.
If this was a carnival, I'm taking her out, believe me.
The 26-year-old administrative assistant denied that she cheated in the Boston Marathon or in the New York race that qualified her to run in Boston. The way the race is run, Ruiz said any unknown who won would face the same pressure.
I do not believe that there is enough coverage for women in any of the races. I believe that maybe after this, whether you prove me guilty or not, which I am not, there will be more coverage of women crossing the finish line during 26 miles. It's not fair.
Ruiz declined the offer of a New York newspaper to run the same distance again for $1,000, but said she was willing to take a lie detector test to prove that she did not cheat.
I had 1 minute to feel that I had won the race, and every moment after that has been a nightmare.
Marathon officials are expected to make a decision soon whether to take back her marathon medal.
If they take my title away from me, I don't know. I don't know.
Randy Daniels, CBS News, New York.
And that's the way it is. Thursday, April 24th, 1980, the 173rd day of captivity for the American hostages in Iran. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. I'll be away tomorrow, next week on vacation, and Dan Rather will be here. Good night.
Back when cars were first streamlined to use less gas, General Tire had been offering quality service for 2 decades. Today, when the need to save fuel is even greater, skilled General professionals offer most any service to help keep your car running smooth and fuel efficient at a fair price. So for tires and service, think General. We've been helping America run smoothly for a long, long time.
Sooner or later, you'll own Generals.
Okay, Five Alive, refresh me.
Wow! Okay, Five Alive, refresh me. Wow!
It's Snow Crop 5 Alive with 60% real juice made from 5 delicious fruits. Tangerine, lemon, grapefruit, lime, and orange make one thirst-quenching, all-natural, refreshing taste.
Wow! 5 Alive sure refreshes me.
Snow Crop 5 Alive, the all-natural refresher.
This has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Coming up next, it's the very latest in news, weather, and sports with the News Center 8 team, followed by PM Magazine, here on TV 8.
We are moving from there.
First in Nevada, KLAS, Las Vegas.